All right, everyone, good afternoon and welcome to the 2023 Titan Grad Slam. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're really glad to have you here. As a little housekeeping, we're going to ask if everyone who is not speaking could please turn your cameras off, make sure you're muted. We really appreciate that. We don't want to distract our contestants while they're presenting, and so that would be a great help. Thank you so much. My name is Sarah Hill, and I am the Director of Graduate Studies and also a Professor of Political Science here at Cal State Fullerton, and I'm really excited to get to be part of today's Grad Slam. I want to especially welcome all of our student participants who are here with us today. We really appreciate your participation, and thank you to our audience. We're so glad to have all of you here. And to start us off, I'm really glad to welcome our 4 judges that we have. So our first judge, actually, I know him well from back when he was in my classroom back in the day, Nicholas Cabeza, who serves as the Government Affairs Analyst for the City of Long Beach in the Office of the City Manager. He is on the Cal State Fullerton Alumni Association Board of Directors, serving as the President-elect. And he graduated from Cal State Fullerton with a bachelor's degree in public administration, and he holds a master's degree in public administration from USC. Nick, would you like to say a few words of welcome?
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. Looking forward to hearing your presentations, and just a quick little shameless plug for the Alumni Association. Be sure to stay connected, after graduation by joining the Alumni Association. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to hearing from you. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Our second judge is Darren Jones, who is the Executive Director, Strategy and Transformation for Enterprise Technology at the Walt Disney Company, and he serves on the Cal State Fullerton Philanthropic and Alumni Association. He graduated from 1991 with a bachelor's degree in business administration from Cal State Fullerton, and he also holds an MBA in marketing from Wayne State University. Darren, would you like to say a few words of welcome?
Yeah, welcome everybody. Welcome Titans. Can't wait to hear your presentations. Us judges are casual, so hopefully you have fun and don't focus on having harsh critics on this side. We're rooting for all of you to have great presentations, and we're very much looking forward to it.
Great. Our third judge is Ava Phillips, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice in Claremont, California. Ava currently serves as the Chief Financial Officer on the board of the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. She graduated from Cal State Fullerton in 1997 with a Master of Counseling degree in Marriage, Family, and Child Counseling, and she has a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Cal State Dominguez Hills. Ava, we're glad you're with us today. Would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, certainly. I'd like to welcome everyone here. I'm so grateful and honored to be here to support you all on your journey, and just relax. You're preaching to the choir. We're all here to support you and welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And finally, our fourth judge is Dr. Binod Tiwari, who is our AVP for Research and Sponsored Projects here at Cal State Fullerton. He's also a professor of civil and environmental engineering. His research is on slope stability and stabilization, landslide mitigation, applied GIS, and geotechnical earthquake engineering. Dr. Tiwari, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. So good afternoon, welcome, and congratulations, students who made to this milestone. And I'm personally very excited to know what great things you are doing.
Great. Thank you to all of our judges for being here today. We really appreciate your dedication to our graduate students. That means a lot to us. So with that, I would like to go ahead and introduce our Assistant Vice President for Graduate Studies on campus, Dr. Elaine Fry, to share a few words with us.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Thank you so much for being here. And we're so happy to have the largest Grad Slam student group here in the last 3 years. So we appreciate you telling us about your research. This is really one of my favorite events of all time. I'm a big fan of research presentations, but this is my favorite format because it's like a TED Talk. It's a 3-minute format, and it's very fast-paced and interesting. And I think This is a very good skill to have as you move forward in your career and as you start to hone the way you talk about your research. I think you'll find that this is more useful than maybe the technical talks you might do in a conference. As AVP for research for graduate studies, I represent the interests of all of our graduate students and programs on campus. We have more than 5,000 graduate students in credentials, master's, and doctoral programs. We have 60 master's degrees and 2 doctoral degrees, and we span all of our 8 colleges and most of our disciplines. My team supports students from admissions all the way through graduation, and we're so happy to help you through your educational journey and see your research and creative activities, and it's my privilege to represent graduate education on this campus. It's definitely an accomplishment to be at the upper echelon of education by earning an advanced degree. One of the tenets of graduate education here at CSUF is that students work closely with faculty on research and creative activities so that they can gain knowledge, skills, and higher order competence to become an expert and leader after they graduate. This event is one of those contributions of our graduate students that highlights those accomplishments. On behalf of the CSUF community, we applaud your efforts in creating scholarly and creative work that you've undertaken. We know that this work marks a significant time and effort that you've spent here as a graduate student. And not only will your work enhance your own personal knowledge, but it also enhances the professional lives of the faculty that have worked with you for all this long. The faculty in our academic departments are enriched by what you've done here. And I'm sure I can speak on their behalf for thanking you for doing that. We value you as a collaborator, and we value your place on this community, in this campus community as graduate students. So I know that you're going to move on to become change agents for the better, more prosperous and more equitable world that we all strive for here at the university. I'm so happy to be here today and learn more about your work. So thank you to the students, thank you to the judges, and thank you to the audience for your support. Okay, now we're going to move on to talk about the rules of the Grad Slam.
Now for the guidelines. Each of our participants today is allowed to use only one slide to complement their presentation. During the competition, participants will be judged based on their ability to successfully engage a non-specialist audience while communicating key details about their research in 3 minutes or less. So this is a challenge. Because this event is being held virtually, we will allow students to present for 3 minutes with a 5-second grace period without penalty. Our timer will start. Each slide for the students has a timer that will start once the student starts their presentation. And thereafter, a point will be deducted from the student's total score for every 5 seconds of time that the student goes over. This is a daunting task. And despite this being an online event, each competitor will be presenting live. These are not recordings. So I think you're in for a real treat as we get to see the wonderful work that our grad students are doing.
The way that we proceed for each student today is that Dr. Hill will introduce the student, who will then deliver the 3-minute presentation. Afterwards, while the judges tally the scores, I'll chat with the students to learn a little bit more about them and their research. But please note that that chat after the presentation has no influence on the scoring. I also have a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to share. We know that you'd like to cheer on your participants. However, we would like to note that we would like to ask that you not use the chat. Please be respectful of our participants. And so you can use reactions instead, like the confetti, to celebrate the students after they've completed their presentation. We appreciate it if you can keep your videos off throughout the entire presentation if you're not speaking. Okay, after all the students have presented, the judge will submit their scores and we will announce the winners. We'll have a first, second, and third place winner based on the judges' scoring. Those winners will go on to compete in the CSU Grad Slam event in May.
All right, with all of that, I'm guessing our students are ready and you all are anxious to hear from them. So we're gonna start. Our very first student is Marnoush Barbara Saad, who is earning an MA in psychological research. And the title of her presentation is The Effect of Childhood Trauma on Hoarding Disorder in Older Adults. So Marnoosh, would you turn on your camera and microphone and say hello? We'll test it out.
Hi. Yeah, can
All
you hear
right.
me?
You're good to go. We can hear you. All right. You ready to get started?
Yes.
All right. Here we go.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Marnoosh Babarsad. I'm a second-year MA student in psychological research here at Cal State. My research is about the effect of childhood trauma and hoarding disorder in older adults. The first thing that we need to know is what is hoarding disorder. So hoarding disorder is when people keep collecting objects that they are not valuable or important, and however, they are unable to discard them. So as a result, there is a devastating clutter in their living spaces. More than 400 million people worldwide suffer from this disorder, and it is 3 times more likely for older adults to experience that because it exacerbates as we age. The importance of knowing about hoarding disorder is that it's a newly coded disorder. It first appeared in DSM-5, the psychology book that was published in 2012. So it's very new and there are a lot of things that we don't know about it yet. It really affects different aspects of life very significantly. For example, older adults with hoarding disorder experience more seizure, head injuries, cardiovascular disease, and hypertension. They're also at a higher risk of experiencing fire hazard. They are 8 times actually more likely to experience fire hazard and being evicted. They are also at higher risk of experiencing economic and occupational functioning difficulties. Regarding risk factors, there are no definitive risk factors yet. However, genetic trauma and type of personality appear to play a role in emergence of hoarding disorder. As far as my research, I am assessing this relationship specifically, considering that past relationship focus was on trauma in general. I made it more specific, and I'm assessing 5 different types of childhood trauma. And I assume that I want to see that how it can predict the emergence of hoarding disorder and how it differs based on gender. I will expect to see that it positively predicted and it is higher in female compared to male. I also, for data analysis, I'm going to be using hierarchical regression, and by finding potential risk factor for hoarding disorder, I hope to help a clinician to find better intervention or improve the current intervention that they use. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Marnoosh. If you can keep your speaker on, and we'll just chat while the judges are deliberating. And
Okay.
Judges, when you're complete, you can just put a thumbs up reaction or give us a sign that you're done. So this is a really interesting topic. I actually, when I first heard it, I thought about the Hoarders TV show
Yeah.
that's become very popular. So, I mean, do you think that's a signal that more people are really taking this seriously and then it's getting more attention?
Actually, one of the reason that it was like very popular at some point was because of the attention of media. So it is one of the factors that people care about this disorder. However, it's not the only reason.
What made you interested in this particular topic? Was there something that really drew you to this field?
Yeah, so I had a project for one of my classes, one of my seminar classes, that we had to think of a topic that if we had $1 billion and we could do whatever we want to do for research, what topic we choose. And after a lot of lit review and stuff, I wanted to be so unique. And I did a lot of search and I read a lot about hoarding, and I became interested in hoarding and how trauma affects it. And it actually emanates from that. However, it was different. I kind of changed it as for my thesis. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that information. And now we'll move on to the next contestant. Thank you, Marnoush.
Of course. Thank you.
Our next contestant is Rosie Guillen. Rosie is earning her master's in public health, and the title of her presentation is Roid Rage, an evaluation on coping strategies for pediatric acute lymphoblastic leukemia parents. Yes, okay, I think we got that there, parents. Rosie, would you please turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Wonderful, we can hear you. So are you ready to get started?
Yes,
All right, perfect. Here we go.
I'll wait for the timer.
It starts when you start talking. You can go.
Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, or ALL, is the most common childhood cancer in the US, accounting for over 2,000 new diagnoses every year, and nearly 54% are children under age 10. And when a child is diagnosed with ALL, they immediately begin intense chemotherapy to treat this life-threatening blood and bone marrow cancer. And initial treatments include strong steroid medications because steroids help destroy leukemia cells and they are most effective towards remission, which is when all signs and symptoms of cancer have disappeared. However, these steroids also cause harsh side effects like extreme irritability, violence, hallucinations, and rage, commonly known as steroid rage or roid rage. And these are just a few of the traumatizing side effects that children experience just to save their lives. And it's even more burdensome for parents because parents don't know how to cope and obtain positive quality of life during steroid treatments. In fact, parents are told to either seek professional help or find ways to cope with these side effects on their own due to limited resources on this subject. That's why I devoted my master's project to creating a simple double-sided steroids educational pamphlet in hope that sometime in the near future, hospitals and healthcare clinics can distribute pamphlets like mine to newly diagnosed ALL parents before beginning initial steroid chemotherapy. And the pamphlet's content includes things like the most common steroid medications used for childhood ALL, their side effects, examples of positive coping strategies for parents during and after steroid treatments, tips on minimizing steroid tantrums based on the child's age, and real parent steroid experiences through testimonies. Therefore, it's essential to have adequate resources on hand for parents like this steroids pamphlet to ultimately help them develop more realistic yet positive quality of life during and after this new stage of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. Now, well, just while the judges are deliberating, we will just have a little chat. Have you had experience with any children going through leukemia yourself?
Yes, actually, my daughter, she was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, ALL, first at age 7, and then she relapsed again at age 10. So I have over 5 years experience dealing with this firsthand.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, that must be really difficult to go through. Is that what inspired you to write your research on this?
Definitely. I think steroids, and I believe almost all parents can attest to this. Steroids is the worst chemotherapy of all times for ALL, and particularly with children, because they don't know how to develop these feelings. They don't know why they're feeling these feelings. So it's extra hard compared to adults having ALL, or teens even.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been working on this particular project?
Funny thing. So I was in my second semester of my master's program in 2016. Second week of the spring semester, my daughter relapsed. So I had to take a long leave of absence. So I have been working on it for almost, well, I would say I've been thinking of it for over 5 years, but really the last year, I really went full force on it.
This is great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And,
Thank you.
This seems like a very impactful thing that you're doing. So great work.
Yes, I wish I could show the entire pamphlet, but on these types of slides, I can't. But I'm more than happy to share it with anyone who's interested in looking at the final pamphlet.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Great. We'll be going on to the next contestant now.
Our next contestant is Stephen Mendoza, and Stephen is earning an MS in Environmental Studies, and the title of Stephen's project is Fossil-Based Restoration Plan of the La Brea Tar Pit. Stephen, would you please turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Are you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
All right, here you go.
Cool. Sweet. So, hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Mendoza, and my project is called A Fossil-Based Restoration Plan of La Brea Tar Pits. And to best understand my project, we have to talk about vegetation prehistory, which is everyone's favorite topic, right? People love plants and history. Exciting stuff. And I wrote right underneath that, who cares? Which is a valid question. Why do we care about old plants? I ask myself this question every day. And to demonstrate why I care, I did a passage from one of my favorite books. This is the last chapter, the last page of Catcher in the Rye, and I'm going to read you the last sentence. It says, if you do, you start missing everybody. Now, based on that, what do you think this book's about? Kind of a hard ask, right? We don't really know. We're missing a whole lot of context. In fact, we're missing about 214 pages of context. Sometimes when we study our sciences or when we study the environment, we can get caught up in the now, like what's happening today, and we can kind of forget about the past. We can forget that there's a lot of context to everything we know. And I included the geologic timescale to show that Earth's history is very long. It's about 4.6 billion years long. And over that time, it's undergone massive amounts of change. It's been a molten ball of lava. It's been covered in water. It's been covered in plants. And it's also been covered in extensive ice sheets, which is what we study at the La Brea Tar Pits. There we study the last ice age, Pleistocene, about 50,000 years ago to 11,000 years ago. At the La Brea Tar Pits, we have a lot of asphalt, that black stuff that you see in that picture. And because of that asphalt, we have amazing fossil preservation. So we see animals like saber-toothed cats and Marlin's ground sloths and Columbian mammoths. And those fossils are so wonderfully preserved, we can identify them to a species level. And the same goes for the plants there, even though they're a little bit less studied. So in box A, we can see the scaly iconic leaves of a juniper. And in B, we can see a seed pod to a different kind of juniper. And in C, we can see an acorn cap. So the fact that we can identify these plants to a species level is pretty incredible. It doesn't happen in very many places. So for my research project, I am going to use this information to create a fossil-based restoration plan of the tar pits. So we are going to plant a bunch of plants in the new tar pits. It's going to be remodeled in 2028. And there we are going to put all kinds of plants there so that it looks and feels the way Los Angeles looked during the last ice age. This can help us broaden the idea of what is correct in terms of conservation. For example, if we're going to restore a forest, do we want it to look the way it looked 10 years ago or 100 years ago? Maybe we want it to look the way it looked 10,000 years ago, back when California was in a state of extreme drought and it was facing wildfires all the time based on the fossil record, kind of like conditions that we see today. So by studying the past, we can gain context. We can learn more of the story as to what our environment was like and we can recreate resilient climate spaces because the only constant on this planet is the fact that it's going to change again.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you
Hi.
for that.
Yeah, of course.
So this is really interesting to me.
I think so.
I'm just kind of wondering, just more generally, why do you think it's important that people get to see things like the tar pits? What do you think the purpose of having the public, visit those spaces are? And, why is that impactful?
The public is the future, right? A bunch of little kids are going to go there and they're going to see climate resilient spaces. And it just opens our minds as to what is correct, like I said, in terms of restoration and conservation. A lot of the times, like the National Park Service has this idea that we want our landscapes to look the way they looked 100 years ago. And yeah, that's great. We would love that. But also our planet's constantly changing, like I said. 100 years ago, the conditions were a lot different than they are today. So just by doing this, I'm hoping to like kind of open the minds that people or open people's minds and kind of just like allow them to see deeper time landscapes. And they don't look like they did today. These are like no analog assemblages of plants. So the way that these plants are going, it's going to be plants that we see today, but they're going to be growing side by side along plants that we don't typically think of growing together today. I think it's interesting.
That's really great. Yeah. So how long have you been working with this particular topic?
I'm a new plant guy. So I started working at the museum like 4 years ago as a tour guide. And then I stopped there. I'm working at a different nonprofit now. But I wasn't ready to leave. So I asked them like, hey, is there anything you guys need that I can like, kind of hang around? And they kind of just offered me this. They were like, well, are you interested in plants? And I was like, sure. And now we're doing it. So I kind of just jumped into it.
Well, I think that's rare where a research project just falls into your lap like that. So that's amazing for you.
I'm pretty lucky.
Well, thank you for your presentation and, great job on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. So we're on to our next presentation.
Up next, we have Inaria Johnson, who is earning an MS in special education. Her presentation title is What Would They Want to Say If They Could? Using aided language input to increase the expressive communication of a pre-symbolic preschool child with Down syndrome. Inaria, would you turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hi.
Hi, great, we can hear you. Are you ready to get started?
Yes.
Great, here we go.
When was the last time you heard a baby cry? What do you think they were trying to tell you? Humans communicate from birth if we know what to look for. A cry or a face crunch communicates an infant is tired, hungry, sick, or needs a new diaper. How would you communicate if you suddenly lost the ability to speak or were dropped in a foreign country without Google Translate? Now pretend you're in preschool. You've learned to communicate through behavior using vocalizations, facial expressions, and simple gestures like pulling on someone's sleeve for attention. This works, and you're understood for now, but how will you request, protest, comment, or express your feelings as you age? How can we, as communication partners, interpret those behaviors as communicative attempts and encourage more language? Augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC, encompasses how an individual communicates besides talking and is useful for anyone who has trouble with speech or language skills. There are two types. Unaided AAC is what you can do with your body: eye gaze, sign language, body language, and verbalizations. Aided AAC includes light tech, like a printed communication board, mid tech, like a button that says a single message, like Bunny the talking dog, or high tech, speech generating devices that can communicate entire messages, like the late Stephen Hawking. Aided language input, or ALI, is a research-based strategy in which communication partners highlight symbols in an AAC system as they interact verbally with the person, using AAC to teach language, and it looks different from person to person. Imagine playing with a 3-year-old who communicates primarily through behavior, sometimes yelling or throwing items to get your attention. Let's practice the word go when playing with cars on a ramp. As the communication partner, I could say, wow, look at the car go. And depending on the child, use different forms of AAC to model my language. Signing the word go, pointing to go on a communication board, or tapping go on a speech generating device. My research collected data on one student in my classroom and focused on meaningful, individualized instruction that followed their interests. And at the end of the research period, their expressive communication increased by 20%. If you cannot communicate, you're more likely to have anxiety and depression, less likely to have a job, and more at risk for sexual abuse. The benefits of AAC intervention include increases in language, cognition, reading, and peer interactions. Communication is a human right. All communication is valid, and everyone has the potential to communicate. Thank you.
Thank you, Anaria. Thank you so much for that. As you know, as a mother, I sort of resonated with it, when you're talking about kids not being able to communicate, because all little kids have a really difficult time with this. What do you think are the next steps for this type of research?
So I kind of outlined it in my chapter 5, is spreading it from my classroom to the rest of the school, maybe creating trainings on how to implement it throughout the day, and then also training the parents so that they're not just getting this aided language input in the classroom, but they're getting it throughout their entire day.
I can see how that would be impactful, given that parents don't usually know what to do with these types of behaviors. That's really great. How did you become interested in this particular area?
I'm a preschool teacher, special ed preschool teacher, and I have several students this year with Down syndrome who have complex communication needs. And I also am a Project ABC scholar through Cal State Fullerton, where I had to take some communicative disorders classes with speech language pathologists. So I had the perfect opportunity to really practice the theory that we were learning in class, taking the knowledge I was learning in the AAC classes and implementing it in my teaching at school.
That's really wonderful. Honestly, that's the goal of graduate school, right? I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today. We really appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
Our next contestant is Chris Bondock. Chris is earning a master's in social work, and the title of his presentation is "It's Not Ever Going to Work, So Why Would I Even Try? Bland and Latino Youth Perspectives on Behavioral Health Treatment Engagement During Reentry After Incarceration." Chris, would you turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hello, can you all hear me?
We can hear you. You ready to
Awesome.
get started?
Let's do this.
All right, here you go.
So the U.S. juvenile legal system disproportionately harms and imprisons Black and Latino youth, and much of this disproportionate impact relates back to behavioral health disparities in the population. Compared to white youth, Black and Latino youth have higher behavioral health needs, are less likely to receive treatment, and more likely to be punished or incarcerated for their symptoms. Not only are high and unmet behavioral health needs associated with an increased risk of incarceration, the experience of incarceration itself has been shown to either create or worsen behavioral health challenges. Then having unmet behavioral health needs has been related to an increased risk of reincarceration, and then continued involvement in the criminal legal system has been connected to worse long-term health and social outcomes. So the literature paints a pretty grim picture of how these youth can too easily find themselves trapped in this cycle of repeat incarceration and escalating behavioral health needs. Fortunately, providing treatment during the reentry period, that's 6 months after release, has been shown to increase or improve outcomes. As such, many courts ask that youth engage or mandate that youth engage in treatment during this period and view attendance as the primary outcome. But there's an issue with using attendance as a measure of engagement in this specific population, because for youth that are mandated to go to care, attendance might better capture compliance rather than true investment in treatment. And I think providers who have worked with this population know this pretty well, including myself. We've all had clients who show up to every session, to meet their court requirements, but in the session, they barely talk, they tell us what they think we want to hear, and they don't follow through on treatment goals. And then all those things then negatively impact their progress and treatment outcomes in the long run. So when looking at treatment engagement in this specific population, it's important to go beyond attendance and consider the attitudes related to engagement, which is what we did. We did a qualitative study with 27 youth recently released from LA County Juvenile Hall and asked them to talk about their overall health and healthcare utilization during reentry. Based on our thematic analyses, we organized youth perspectives into 3 themes: their perceptions of their behavioral health needs, their perceptions of the effectiveness of treatment, and their perceptions about their connections with their service providers. The short story is that youth who described worse engagement, A, minimized their symptoms, B, saw treatment as ineffective, and C, felt that providers did not represent them or could not understand their lived experiences. And for this talk, I want to focus on that last theme about you feeling unrepresented and misunderstood by their providers. Currently in higher education, the way it's designed, both in admissions and how programs work, it makes it hard for individuals from marginalized backgrounds to become providers and ultimately serve their communities. For example, incarceration precludes people from federal student loans, and in social work, we do unpaid internships. So when you just consider the economic reality of completing a graduate program in mental health, in addition to the barriers that stand in front of previously incarcerated individuals and other marginalized communities, it's not really a surprise that these youth fail to encounter providers who represent them and understand their experiences intrinsically. So when thinking about barriers to higher education, I think it's important to think about how those barriers trickle down to negatively affect the health and well-being of our most vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was really interesting. And as someone who, kind of leads parts of graduate admissions, I'm really interested in what you said. I'm wondering if you could provide a recommendation to, our university or others around us. What would you think would be the most influential thing that we could do to help these future, graduate students get to our campus?
Yeah, at a program level, it's maybe too hard to just pick one thing. There's so many systems and other things that intersect with each other. I know paying for placements would make it more economically viable for a lot of people. The thing where people with incarcerated histories can't get student loans is a big thing. And then there's just kind of the barriers that come in the way in that pipeline before you even get to admissions, right? Taking the GRE, things that affect your GPA. So it's kind of hard to say. I think the best answer is to address like those more macro level factors that marginalize these communities at a broader level, but it's hard to just pick one thing at a graduate program level.
We want the simple answer, Chris. No, I understand that this is a very complex problem.
For sure.
Yeah, this is very interesting. What made you want to study this particular topic?
Yeah, for me, the start of my career was kind of informed by this interest in addressing inequities. And I think the carceral system is this intersection of every type of oppression you can probably think of. They all intersect in that system. So it was kind of a natural fit with my own interests. And then I've been working with this population since 2018, first clinically and then in research. And just the more time I spend working with it, the deeper my interest grows. So I kind of just found my niche.
That's great. Thank you. It's very fascinating. That concludes this presentation. We'll be moving on to the next one. Thank you.
Our next contestant is Jessica Duran. Jessica is earning an MS in chemistry, and the title of Jessica's presentation is Nanomaterials Pave the Way for the Next Computing Generation. Jessica, would you turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hi, everyone.
Wonderful. We can hear you. You ready to get started?
Yes.
All right, away we go.
Did you know we are currently living in the silicon age? It is during this time when tech companies would use silicon as their primary material of choice in our modern electronics. A thin slice of crystalline silicon is manufactured into a wafer, which serves as the foundation for an electronic device. In 1965, Dr. Moore, one of the co-founders of Intel, theorized that we will see this massive growth in silicon chip computer performance and a fast reduction in manufacturing costs for the next 50 years. This is known as Moore's Law. And indeed, we have seen the price of electronics significantly drop over time. Wait a second, Dr. Moore predicted this observation in 1965, and it's been 50 years. What does that mean that time's up? Well, that's a good question. Experts are still having this ongoing debate whether or not Moore's law is dead or alive. Dr. Moore himself even mentioned that it would most likely end this decade if it hasn't already. Okay, so if that's the case, then now what do we do? Well, in the early 2000s, scientists have started to explore the class of nanomaterials in hopes to maintain this trend of technological advancement. Nanomaterials are not distinguished based on their chemistry, but rather their size. So using a bottom-up approach, building a new structure one atom at a time gives the advantage to scientists to design their own material, thereby providing opportunities to develop their own electronic properties that are not otherwise possible. In 2004, a honeycomb lattice 2D sheet named graphene was identified and successfully isolated off a chunk of graphite using Scotch tape. Prior to this, extraction was actually difficult due to how easily it degraded once the layers were separated. Since then, graphene has been considered as one of the key materials to technological advancement due to their unique properties. Thus, exploring this class of materials could extend the life in Moore's law. Okay, nice, but are there other materials that we're exploring? Well, in my research with Dr. Groves, we have explored silicene, germanium, and stannine because of their chemical similarity to graphene. Calculations were performed using a program called GPaw via the supercomputer Turing. First, I created 2D sheets and nanoribbons of each element. Then I made physical holes in these materials and doped them with oxygen to observe how their electronic properties would be affected. I found that by increasing the hole size and doping these materials with oxygen, they were found to be more stable and favorable in formation energy. As scientists, our motivation was to understand how the electronic properties of these nanomaterials could change upon making these hole defects. Not only did our work contribute to the literature on nanomaterials, our findings offer hope on keeping Moore's law alive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. So I am not an expert in this area at all. And in fact, some of that went way over my head, but I'm just wondering, what are with these new materials that you've been exploring, what do you think, like on the consumer side, might be the most significant impact?
Well, we will still see this trend in computers. Our computers will be faster, things will be much better. Recently, Dr. Moore, the one who created Moore's Law, he actually died 2 weeks ago. And I was really, really sad because I was really hoping to meet him. But such is life. With what I want to do, I can only imagine how I really want to look into this and expand my education more into that. So
that's great. Now, during your time here at in your master's program, is most of your time spent in the lab doing this research? Is it very time consuming?
Actually, fun fact, this is I'm actually a new research grad student. I've been barely in this lab for under a year. I had to switch labs because my previous professor had switched to another university. So I went from organic chemistry, a wet lab, to doing everything computational physical chemistry. But because my background's in physics and chemistry, the transition was kind of like, okay, so far actually it's been much easier because I could do everything with a laptop, but I need a cooling pad because my laptop gets pretty hot.
There's more computing needs. So these materials could help you eventually. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That is so great. Well, thank you for sharing your research with us today. This is really interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next contestant is Remus Mitchell. Remus is earning an MA in psychological research, and the title of their presentation is The Learning Disabilities Belief Scale, Development and Pilot Validation. Remus, would you turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Oh no, sorry, I thought I hit the unmute button. That's my mistake. Hi, can you hear
me? There you
okay?
go. We can hear you. Are you all ready to go?
Yes, I am, whenever y'all are ready.
All right, here we go.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Remus Mitchell, and I'm going to be talking about my thesis project today, for which I developed a measure of bias towards people with learning disabilities. First and foremost, learning disabilities are impairments that affect cognitive processes related to learning, such as reading, writing, or math, but they can also affect higher level skills such as memory and attention, abstract reasoning, and so on. So I wanted to create a measure of bias toward this group in particular because much of the previous research exploring bias towards the disabled community has tended to focus on the overall community. And while this research is certainly helpful, it fails to encapsulate the nuance of what it means to live with different types of disability. For instance, somebody with ADHD, a very common learning disability, is going to have a much different experience than somebody with a depression or a physical impairment. They're going to people are going to have different attitudes towards those disabilities, and therefore disabled individuals are going to have different social contexts to navigate. Furthermore, recent research has shown that people tend to exhibit more bias towards individuals with learning disabilities than other subgroups of disability. This may be due to the fact that individuals with learning disabilities don't necessarily have a physical indicator of disability. Therefore, other individuals may assume that the consequences of disability are within that individual's control when that is not necessarily the case. So as people with learning disabilities may be particularly vulnerable to social biases, I created a measure to assess beliefs held towards this group. To actually create the scale, I used a theory called the capabilities framework, which is grounded in the social model and medical model of disability. As you can see on my slide, the medical model essentially sees disability as an issue within the individual that requires some kind of medical intervention or cure to normalize the person. In contrast, the social model of disability sees disability as an external issue that needs to be addressed at the societal level, like within the environment rather than within the individual. Using the capabilities framework, I created 3 subscales to assess different types of beliefs held toward this group. These subscales are also listed on my slide. Going from top to bottom, the 3 subscales were intended to assess whether participants thought society is responsible for supporting people with learning disabilities, whether people thought individuals with learning disability require medical intervention, and whether they believed people with learning disability should be able to live autonomously. After creating the items, I administered them to participants and used the results of this data collection to analyze the structure of the scale. Overall, the study supported the 3 subscale structure and showed that the scale was reliable. But with all that being said, what does this actually mean for the scale? Well, I intended to use the scale, or I created the scale to be used in future research to explore the nature and development of bias towards people with learning disabilities and hopefully other disabilities eventually. With that being said, thank you for your time.
Right on time. Thank you, Remus.
Thank you.
So I'm just curious, when you were testing this scale that you're developing, how exactly did you find participants? And then did you use a survey or talk to them to develop, how you would rank them or rate them in terms of the bias?
Yeah, so initially when I was creating items, I worked with one of my mentors who's in the special education department to kind of as he's specialized in this kind of study, to actually create the items. And then I pilot tested them with other experts in the field. But as far as actually getting participants for the study, for the most part, I relied on different research pools. Here at CSU, have the psychology research pool, because getting all the freshmen in who need class credit and that kind of thing.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. So what made you want to study this particular topic?
Well, I mean, I'm disabled myself. I grew up, my father had Alzheimer's, and so he was living with a disability, and I saw that. And then when after I earned my undergraduate degree, I went and worked at Irvine Unified School District as a special education instructional assistant. And I just found that the attitudes people, especially in my position as an instructional assistant, I was working in that position when the beginning of COVID happened. So I saw all that transition and how students with disabilities were essentially just not getting like prioritized, and they were kind of getting put aside. And I kind of saw this, like these attitudes or negative attitudes kind of be very transparent. And that made me interested in kind of developing research to really dive in and explore why that is.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so impactful, and it's so great that you saw something and you decided to, work on it and improve it in the future. And I think that's really amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, our contestant is Diana Lopez. Diana is earning an MS in kinesiology, and the title of her presentation is A Manual for Best Training Practices Around the Menstrual Cycle. Diana, would you turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hi.
Great,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, are you all set, ready to go?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Lopez, and today I will be talking about my project, which is the training manual for best training practices around the menstrual cycle. As we go through this presentation, I want you to think of a woman in your life, whether it's yourself, friend, family member, or a peer. I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, now keep that person in the back of your mind. As you can see in this slide, we have various examples of how far women can push themselves in sports and exercise. We have my friend Amanda on the top left, winning her bodybuilding pro card. My friend Rosie on the top right, playing rugby. And then my friend Daniela competing in her triathlon on the bottom left. And then there's me deadlifting in my powerlifting competition. We all have one thing in common, aside from enjoying pushing ourselves, and that is experiencing a menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle is a topic that needs to be discussed more in the world of sports and exercise. The menstrual cycle is complex and unique to every woman. However, to give you a background, it typically consists of two phases as shown in this chart. There is the follicular phase and the luteal phase. In the beginning of the follicular phase is when a woman starts her period, usually lasting between 3 to 7 days. Then there's the late follicular phase when a woman starts to prepare for ovulation. After ovulation, the luteal phase occurs, which is where women typically experience those common PMS symptoms such as bloating, breast tenderness, cramps, mood swings, cravings, the list goes on, and the process repeats itself every month. As a woman's hormonal levels fluctuate, as you can see in the chart, estrogen and progesterone are dominant hormones. And some research has shown that this can influence strength, endurance, power, muscle gain, and even flexibility. For example, a study showed that during the middle of the follicular phase, where you see estrogen start to rise, there was an increase in VO2 and percent VO2 peak during a running program, which means endurance was higher during this time in their period or in their menstrual cycle. With this manual, I hope to provide a resource for practitioners such as personal trainers and coaches on how to approach this topic with their female clients. I will create training programs focused on strength, hypertrophy, and weight loss, as well as discuss the effects and different types of birth control on a woman's performance. Lastly, I will provide nutritional supplementation and a meal plan catered to the menstrual cycle. Now, I want you to think of that woman in your life that I asked about in the beginning. What would you want to share with them about our conversation today? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you.
So this is not my area at all. I'm just curious, though, just from a more broad perspective, this information, what do you think it could do for competitive sports in general?
I think it could just raise more awareness around the menstrual cycle. So, I mean, obviously it's something that women have been experiencing for years and years, and it's nothing new, the process itself, but just the fact that it's not talked about enough within the sports world. I think it would be a great tool for athletes and for coaches and for clients. And it's not to say that like the period, like having a menstrual cycle is something that's going to impede performance, but it's something that we can just try to understand more about and try to understand each individual when it comes to sports.
That makes sense. Do you feel that this topic hasn't been covered much or at all in the literature?
No, it's honestly been really difficult to find research on the menstrual cycle and the effects it has when it comes to performance, like strength, like, you know, powerlifting. Like, how will that affect you if you have like your period the day you're supposed to lift heavy? So yeah, it's definitely, the research is limited, so I'm hoping to see more of that.
That's great. All the more reason why your research is making an impact. So great job. And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Our next contestant is Brandon Quintana. Brandon is earning an MS in biological science, and the title of his presentation is Friend or Foe: Effect of Eelgrass on Biomass and Condition Index in a Multi-Habit Living Shoreline. Brandon, would you turn on your camera and microphone and say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Great, we can hear you, Brandon. So are you ready to get started?
Of course.
All right, here we go.
So, do you ever hit a wall, or should I say seawall? If you're a wave, you probably hit seawalls often. They're one of the man-made coastal infrastructures across California made to combat coastal degradation, but at what cost? In the long term, they break down, increase erosion, and decrease habitat. What if I told you there was an alternative to shoreline protection? Living shorelines are that alternative, and they're made up of natural resources and placed strategically to decrease erosion and increase habitat. This living shoreline in Newport Bay on the left consists of restored native oysters and eelgrass, where both populations have severely declined, and to restore them while creating habitat for other species. My work is focused on investigating the relationship between oysters and eelgrass and finding out whether they are friends or foes. To test this, I use two response variables, biomass and condition index. Biomass provides an estimate of how much ecosystem services can be expected to be returned. For instance, the higher the biomass, the more filtration function we can expect to be offered. On the top right, we have two oyster beds, one that has a higher total biomass that provides more filtration services versus on the right, we see a sparse oyster bed, which has a lower biomass and is lacking in its filtration services. Condition index provides important biological information on how the species is doing at the individual level and is basically a summary of the health of the organism. So let's pull two oysters out of our reef. Our plump oyster on the left side has a high condition index and would be considered healthy versus the emaciated oyster would have a low condition index and be considered unhealthy. We are going to use biomass and condition index together to understand the ecosystem services being returned and the health of the organisms there in order to see the small and the big picture in Newport Bay and inform future management decisions. So far, we have found that some ecosystem services, like water filtration, were significantly reduced when eelgrass was present, but also learned that eelgrass, when it was present, there were significant increases in biodiversity, eelgrass growth, sedimentation, and decreases in the wave energy coming in. The takeaway for this talk is that learning more about this specific coastal restoration approach can immediately inform co-restoration efforts and answer the question, are oysters and eelgrass friends or foes? Like some relationships, it's complicated. And it really depends on what the goals of your restoration project are. And once those goals are decided, we can better restore species and habitat and ultimately better protect coastal communities depending on our coastline, which is particularly important in the face of climate change and sea level rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Well, I was hoping you were going to give me the easy answer and tell me if it was a friend or a foe.
I mean, that's what I was hoping to find out.
I'm wondering, when you were doing this research and collecting information, did you spend a lot of time in the mud?
Yeah, how much time like on the mud or stuck in the mud? Because it was a lot of time in both.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So how long does it take to collect, samples for these types of research projects?
Yes, for this specific project, there was about 10,000 samples that we had to collect. It's usually about a week for every year that we collected. So 2 weeks total collection time, but the processing time took probably like almost 2 years because we were processing at a rate of 200 samples per week. And I had like 10 undergraduates helping me. So without everyone else helping me, I don't think that I would be able to tell you that it's a complicated relationship right now.
Wow, that's a huge team. Is that normal for labs to have that many students involved?
I think our lab is a really like big collaborative lab, but I was able to like find like other outside funding to like pay undergraduates, as well as I had like REU students over the summer. It was like a really busy summer in 2022 where we had like 4 REU students, 2 high school students, like 2 lead technicians, and then me and another grad student like helping out. So it was a probably unique summer, but yeah, for the scale of the project, we needed that.
Wow, that's so great. I mean, I honestly love to see that you're able to work with the undergraduates. I'm sure that they feel that they get, mentorship from the graduate students and also from the faculty. That just sounds like a really great environment to learn.
A lot of them have been able to like use the project to like branch out to like get into like different PhD programs, or like the lead undergraduates are now at UCSB or working with like nonprofits to kind of like expand like off of this experiences that they had with the project. So it's really cool.
That's really great. Well, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate your presentation on this work.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'm going to invite the judges to go into a secret room, a breakout room, while they deliberate our 9 presentations. So while they do that, I will just make a couple of announcements. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right. Well, first, before I get into the Grad Slam for the Cal State University system, I'd just like to take the time to thank my team for making the Grad Slam work. Karina Paloa is behind the scenes, and she is working her magic and making sure everything works correctly. So thank you, Karina. And thank you for Dr. Sarah Hale for the moderation of this event. And of course, to our judges who are going to be deliberating in this part of the process. Hopefully they can do it quickly, and we'll reveal to you the winners of this competition. So when we have our results, what we will do is we actually have 2 events that we're sending our winners to. Our top 3 winners will go to a CSUF event as part of the UROC Week of Research. And so they're going to be presenting what we're calling lightning talks on April 17th from 1 to 1:45 in the TSU. And we're going to have our winners give their talk, and we'll have a little bit more interaction with the audience. And then we're probably going to talk a little bit to the undergraduates about graduate school and the students' graduate experience here at CSUF. So if you're around, we hope that you'll come to the lightning talks. And if you're faculty, if you could encourage your students to come to the lightning talks, that would be wonderful. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to send our top 2 winners to the CSU Grad Slam event. This year, this Grad Slam event is on May 5th, and it kind of goes in 2 rounds because it's so large. So the preliminary round is in the morning from 10:30 to 12, and then the winners from that round go on to the final round for a really fun final round from 1 to 2:30. If we are sending 2 of our students, so I hope you'll be able to support them. This year, San Diego State University is hosting the Grad Slam, and they're putting together a really good program for us. And almost all of the CSUs are going to be participating 22 of the campuses are participating in the Grad Slam this year. So we are really excited as grad deans and grad administrators that we're getting everybody to participate and sending these students forward to the CSU event. Next slide, please. Thanks. I just wanted to, take the time to share with one of our former judges. I believe she actually was a judge 2 years in a row, Sylvia Contreras. She gave us some advice for the students during one of the grad slams. And she said, you should get involved. The memories that you make at CSUF, you will cherish forever. She was a graduate in the BA in communications in 1996 and is an active alumni. And this is just some fun information about our university. Did you know that Jewel Plummer Cobb was one of our former presidents, I think the third president of the CSUF, and she was the first African-American woman to lead a major university in the Western US. And we had the privilege of having her as our president from 1981 to 1990. Her area of expertise, she was a scientist, and she was known for promoting women in the sciences. Her quote was, "I think I'd like to be remembered as a Black woman scientist who cared very much about what happened to young folks, particularly women going into science." So we are glad that she left that legacy with us and was one of our former presidents. Okay, next I'd just like to give a shout out to the Graduate Studies Center, which is in Langsdorff Hall in 217. For those grad students that are attending right now, I hope you're able to come by to the GS, we call it the GSC, and take advantage of what we provide. So we do have a lot of study space, and I think that's one of the primary functions of it, is just to be a space for graduate students to be. And we have a private room in the back if you need to reserve a private room for whatever, or maybe small group study. I think it only accommodates 2 or 3. We have writing appointments. We have one-on-one writing appointments that you can reserve ahead of time if you need help with writing. And you can find that information on our website to reserve an appointment. And we do that throughout the semester. And we have, I feel that our students find that very helpful as they navigate the difficult writing assignments that they have to do in graduate school, like a thesis or a project. We also host events and various social events that our students have wanted to put on. We had a graduate student mixer, and we had several workshops on writing and graduate school. So we often try to make sure that people know that if they are looking to go into graduate school, we are a resource. And those that are in graduate school, we try to put on workshops that may be of interest, but they may not get that information from their department. For example, we did a scholarship tips and tricks, and I believe Sarah was one of the people who helped speak in that particular workshop. We did, which was also very popular, a community college, how to become a community college professor, which was very well attended by our students. And then writing your best CV. We all have to write those resumes and CVs. You can never use enough help with that. So those are just some of the things that we do. Again, if you're a student, we look forward to seeing you there or seeing you in the events. And if you're a professor, we'd love to have you spread the word that they have a space to go. Graduate students have their space, so they should use it. Okay, let me just take a look.
I believe we're ready to announce the winners.
Okay, well, that is wonderful.
All right, I want you to know, first of all, the judges were really impressed. They really enjoyed your presentations across the board. So this was not an easy decision, but we do have 2 winners that we're excited to announce. For second place, our winner. Oh,
I do apologize. We also have a third place.
Okay, give me 1 second then. Sorry about that. Let me look really quickly at the results. Okay, we have a third place. Okay, we've got that too. All right, we're going to start with third place. In third place, our winner is Diana Lopez. Yay. Congratulations,
Yay.
Diana. We're very proud of you. Great work.
You.
All right, and then we are ready with a second place winner as well. In second place, our winner is Brandon Kitana. Congratulations, Brandon. You did a great job.
Thank you.
And then in first place, our winner is Inaria Johnson. Congratulations, Inaria. All right. Thank you all so much. We are really, like I said, the judges were really impressed. I was impressed. I know we all really appreciated the work that all of our grad students did. You should all be really proud of the great work that you're doing. So thank you to all of our student participants. Congratulations to all of you for your great work, and also to your faculty mentors. We appreciate everything that everyone is doing. And again, thank you to our judges. We really appreciate the time that you gave us today. That made a really big difference. And to you, our audience, we really appreciate everyone who could join us today. Thank you for participating, for cheering on our students, and for attending. This was a really great showcase of our student research. One of the things I love is the diversity of the amazing projects that our students are working on. It's a lot of fun to get to see the array of research happening at Cal State Fullerton. So we hope you enjoyed being part of Cal State Fullerton's Grad Slam. Thank you. Congratulations to all the winners, and we hope you have a wonderful day.